to chair the Popcorn Reform Committee for now 34 years. And with today's program, we bring to a conclusion this wonderful symposium of this year, with the exception of the Human Rights Banquet this evening. Over a year ago, we had the idea that we would love to have as our topic celebrating Canadian-American friendship. It has been a very, very special week for us to welcome and to get to know our new friends from Canada. It was not appropriate to have this week without having particularly two programs. One was with our sister college, the College of the Rockies, and the students from that college put on a program this morning with the associate students from North Idaho College. It would have been equally inappropriate to have this week without what's happening now at 1 o'clock. And that is for our wonderful city of Coeur d'Alene to be here today with our wonderful friends from Cranbrook, which is a sister city of Coeur d'Alene. I, for the first time, have met our friends from Cranbrook and welcome, and I can assure you, you're among very wonderful members of the City Council and the Mayor of Coeur d'Alene. If there's anything this college has, at North Idaho College is a wonderful partnership with our city, as well as other cities, but particularly since we're located in Coeur d'Alene, we have an incredibly great partnership, and we're very pleased that you're all here. Thanks to the Mayor and the City Council staff, I have the outline for the program, and we're going to break it into sections so you and the audience can appreciate the comparison and the contrast of how these two cities deal with a number of issues that are always on the agenda. We will ask each person to present that section that they've been assigned. The first topic is going to be budget sources, and we're very pleased to have from Cranbrook Mayor Ross Priest, and from the Coeur d'Alene Councilman Ben Wolfinger. And the mics that you have there that you can pass around are live and will work. And we will ask Mayor Ross Priest to commence, please.
Thank you, Tony, and welcome everybody, and thank you for the invitation to join you in the 34th Annual Popcorn Forum, and congratulations particularly to you, Tony. 34 years doing this job is something to be recognized and admired, to say the least. So, we just wanted to give a bit of an overview with regards to a very current topic of ours, and that's our budget, because we just the other day wrapped up a session with our staff in the final development stages of our 2004 budget and our 5-year financial plan. So I've distributed to the members of both councils a quick document that I had our Director of Finance Services put together for me to give you a bit of an overview of how Cranbrook does it. And Councillor Wolfinger, I hope that we can share some ideas perhaps here and be able to come out the better for both of us out of this exercise. But just a quick overview, the local government in Canada and British Columbia exists because of at the allowability, I suppose, of our provincial government, because we're not a constituted third level of government. We work under provincial legislation which allows the local government level to operate. And in 2004, January 1st, we had a new community charter come into place. And so we're operating under that legislation now as opposed to our old Local Government Act that we had in place. Part of the charter is much the same, and the items that I'm going to talk about here follow the same line as what we had under the local government. For the last several years, we've been legislated with the requirement of a 5-year financial plan along with our annual budget. So what takes place is we as a council, after our staff and our department heads put together the bulk of the anticipated budget items for each year, they come to us after our administration has amassed the various department budgets and presents a draft plan for council's consideration. And that this year we probably put 40 or 50 hours of council time in on top of all of our staff time, and I wouldn't want to begin to guess the number of hours that they put into that. They start again this year for next year already. So we've taken an approach over the last couple of years to go on, not necessarily a line by line, but a very much more scrutinized system with our members of staff, and we've brought the department heads in to defend their budgets for their departments. And like most governments, and I'm sure that I'm not going to hear much difference from the Coeur d'Alene Council, most recently we've been under severe financial constraints. It's very tough to get dollars for all of the programs that all of our residents would like us to perform on their behalf. And we have a bit of an anomaly, maybe not even so much an anomaly, but within our city we're a population of about 20,000 people, but right on our peripheral boundary we have another 10,000. So we provide services to about 30,000 people, and we have 20,000 people essentially paying for that infrastructure and the ongoing maintenance. So we have some sort of to and fro negotiating back and forth with our immediate neighbors, trying to get them to participate at some point in the direct taxation that we need to run those facilities that we provide. The process goes that we have to, by legislation, have our budget and our 5-year financial plan, that's a 5-year forecast, in place no later than May 15th of every year. So we're on course to do that this year. We will be preparing a bylaw, which we'll have to have in place for public scrutiny. The 5-year plan that we were working on to finalize just the other day now will go out for a public consultation. They will have the ability to look at what our projections are, our capital projects, the anticipated increases because of those capital projects. And they have a time period to give us written comment back. When there is written comment back, council will review that and make any adjustments that we feel are appropriate to that discussion. At that point, the council will have the bylaw delivered to them. We'll do 3 readings. There'll be a time frame again, and then we'll do final adoption. And all of that is tightly scheduled to get us there just barely under May 15th, but it seems to happen that way every year. The budget, I've got a couple of items that I can tell you. We have 5 basic areas. We have our general funds, we have a water, a sewer, a solid waste fund, and then as of 1997, the city of Cranbrook took ownership of our regional airport from our federal government. So we have an airport fund as well, and that's an interesting item in itself, and I'm hoping Councillor Davis will touch on our hopes and aspirations around our airport development that we have underway at this time. So we have those funds that we pay attention to, and then of course we have various forms of revenue as well as the various expenditures that we have. And the revenues you'll see on your sheets, this is low-tech, high-tech. This is from a PowerPoint presentation, but it's on paper, so it's a combination of that. But you see the revenue options that we have are from direct property taxation, user fees, utilities, some grants, prior year surpluses that we carry forward, and when we need to tap into any reserves specific to the various functions that we have. Expenditures are not unlike other municipalities: wages, benefits, materials, supplies. Commitments in our case are our police, which we contract with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We have a new recreation center that's been open for about 3 years now. Our airport, as I mentioned, and about 4 years ago we were able to introduce a public transit system within the city, and that's one of our functions, and our library, of course debt services, and then whatever other new capital projects that we'd like to introduce. And I've broken down a little bit for you to see the taxation, and the 2004 is budget, 2003 is actual, so that's the A and the B. So you can see from taxation for 2004, we're up from 14,500, these are in thousands, so 14,500,000 up to 15 million. In lieu, you can see the utilities, you can see the provincial grants, you can see fees for service, others, and total of our budget this year is approximately $25 million. We do have a system where we also collect for a hospital tax, our school board tax, regional district tax, and that adds about another $7 million into our collection, but it's an in and an out. We basically pay it out to those others. We are the collecting body, so we really bring in about $32 million, but 25 of that stays with the city. There's a couple of pie charts that you can see. In the 2004, direct taxation amounts to about 62%. Other fees, 17%. Grants is down as low as 3%. Our utility charges bring us about 15%. And other miscellaneous ancillary revenue about 3%. Compared to 1991, where taxation directly represented about 50% of our budget, fees were around 14, other was about 3, which is the same. Utilities was a little less, but grants were specifically and significantly higher at 24%. So we've had a major shift. In that time frame, we have Councillor Wabakan and Councillor Gordon have been around council for longer than the other members of council, let's put it that way. And they will recall when our provincial government transfers directly to the city were in excess of $1 million, Jim. They're down somewhere, we don't even factor them in now, quite frankly. They're down to about $40,000-$50,000 versus $1 million. So that's the shift that we've had to make dramatically, and you can see that showing up in the 50% versus the 62% right now. Again, you can see a list of our expenditures, and the general is $2,300,000 protective services, transportation, recreation, utilities, our airport, debt payment for our new recplex, capital projects, and the total of that is basically the budget number of $25,350 that you see come in. And there's a comparison. In 1990 expenditures, protective services were 23, recreation was 9%, capital projects 7, debt payment was 27%, general at 12%, transportation 7, airport was 7, and utilities were 6, versus the 2004 expenditures, where protective services are similar, 22%, recreation is up a little bit at 11%, capital projects at 11. Our debt, interestingly, is down significantly. We've been able to bring that number consistently down. That's been a goal of consecutive councils for some time now. General and transportation, airport, and utilities are shown for you as well. And a couple of more quick comments to make. The debt payment is shown in our general and water services. I just want to make a couple of other comments that you have. That's sort of the end of the slides, but the bulk of our 62% in direct taxation is, in our case, borne by about 60% of the residents, because 60% of that is by direct residential taxation. If we had some other slides, you'd see that industry is a very small amount, about 2%. We're very lacking in any type of significant industry in the city of Cranbrook. We remain an economic sort of dependency on our natural resources, primarily forestry still, about 25%, even with the sort of current dispute between Canada and the United States on the softwood lumber issues. That remains a staple of our area for sure. Our expectations to diversify a little further go hand in hand with, as I said, Councillor Davis will bring you up to speed a little bit later with regard to our airport anticipated increase and expansion to introduce significantly more tourism into our area. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch as quickly as I could try and get through to give you some information where we are, letting you know that we would like to, and certainly our residents would like us to get a little more industrial base, to spread that taxation out a little better. That 60% is still after we use the residential tax as our base, using that as a number one base, and then we have multipliers that we go from there. Our businesses, for instance, are 2.39 times what our residential are, and our industry is somewhere up around 11 times. So you can see by those numbers, it's a very small number on the industry. Our residents would certainly like to have more of that in to pull some of that direct taxation to them. And we continue to operate, move forward. with a bit of a struggle of how we convince our immediate neighbors that they should have some obligation to our tax base for the facilities that they are able to come and use on a continual basis. And without consciously thinking about it, they move to the country because they know the taxes are cheaper there, but want to come in and use our service. So that's one we struggle with, and I'd be interested to hear how you guys may be dealing with that, if you have a similar situation, and what your tax base actually looks like. So that's what I'd like to present this afternoon, and hopefully we can have a good exchange.
Well, thank you very much, and now we'll have the council for Lane.
Thank you. Mayor, I'm sorry I don't have a handout of the high-tech, low-tech, but we certainly look at the numbers here. Here in Coeur d'Alene, the property tax of our budget is only actually about 15%. And our total budget is about $60 million, and just under $9 million of that comes from property taxes. Now, that $60 million looks like a pretty big number, but a lot of that is utility costs. And much like the city of Cranbrook, our utilities pay for themselves. That's a direct charge, and that works quite well. We've also bonded recently for expansion in our sewer treatment plant. Something that obviously is near and dear to our heart, to protect our waterways in this area, and that type of income also has to be accounted for in that budget. But that bonding will eventually bring in, I think it's $27 million to do that expansion. Obviously, that seems to taint that whole budget picture a little bit when you look at it. It brings it right back into perspective. We have a wide variety of sources of income, just like you do. Fortunately, I think, we don't have an airport. And I'm sure that our neighbors north in the city of Hayden would not appreciate if we tried to annex the airport that they currently surround. But we do have other sources of income. One of the things that we do here is impact fees. And I think we were discussing at lunch today how we've just raised, or we're looking at raising those impact fees. And that's really a way for growth to help pay for itself. And not only in just initial, or actually for initial costs, for streets and street maintenance, for fire protection, for police protection, where we have our own police department, we don't contract, and for parks. And we're a city that is very proud of its parks, and we try to have plenty of park acreage for all of our residents. And we have parks that where we own the property now that are still undeveloped. And so that's a nice thing that we do with our developers here in a very growing community. One of the differences I see is you do a spring budget and we do a fall budget. And our budget begins October 1st of each year, but the budgets have to be approved the first meeting in September. And our staff works on starting about this time of year. Actually, they probably started about October 1 and started working that way. In our fiscal year 2002-2003, which started October of 2002, we too spent many hours whittling on the budget. And it was a very painful process. We ended up eliminating 10 positions in the city to come within a balanced budget. And that's never easy for a city to do because, as you stated so well, the people want services, and they're a little reluctant to pay for them. We managed to cut 10 positions and not reduce our services because we found we've got some great staff that wanted to step up to the plate. Here in the state of Idaho, we are limited on our tax rate, any increase. We can only raise our tax rate 3% of the current rate. So that somewhat stymies us a little bit in our rate. Right now, if we raise taxes the maximum amount, it only brings in about $250,000 to the city. So in a $60 million budget, you can see that's kind of a drop in the bucket. And that's something that we struggle with. Fortunately, our staff, we did a little change in the way our staff is set up citywide, and the department heads really work as a team. And I can't speak highly enough about the department heads and the people we have running that show, because last year, when we came to budget hearings, they brought us a balanced budget. And their requests were within the projected incomes. And it was very nice to be able to go through the budget line by line, much like you do, and have great explanations, and for the staff to be able to show us where the money's coming from and where it will be spent, and actually have money in the bank at the end of the year. And that was a pleasant thing to have, and we're told we're going to have it again this year. And I'll tell you, it certainly makes our job so much easier to be able to do that. And no, you can't have any more staff. So. You know, we also exist here based upon laws passed by our state government. And we have battled a little bit, but been successful in our state legislature to keep the amount of money that comes back to us from the state. And that money is generated through sales tax as well as liquor taxes. And they call it revenue sharing here in the state of Idaho, and that the state has tried to dip into that as they've reached financial hard times, but we've managed to salvage that. And we're here in the city of Coeur d'Alene, we're very active with this Association of Cities here in the state of Idaho. And we have spoke strongly and managed to keep that. That's probably one of the biggest keys for us right now, is being actively involved at a state level. And if there's anything I can encourage you to do, being a long way from your provincial capital is tough, and we understand that. It's 400 miles to our capital, and we burn up a little bit of jet fuel getting there, but it's certainly worth it in the long run. Overall, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in where our money comes from and where it goes. Obviously, the biggest expenditure for any government agency is personnel. It's wages and benefits. We're a service industry, and our people provide that service. And so your people are obviously the largest expense. The supplies, the fire hose for the fire truck, or the grease to grease the motor on the well house. Those are minor expenses when it comes down to it. So overall, I'd say for all the differences, we're very much the same. Thank you.
May I say that in I want to say this former student of mine, he learned well with me.
Thank you, John.
I've been here too long, haven't I?
Yes, you have.
But I'm not leaving. Our second area is of what is the city most proud of. I think that's a wonderful subtopic. And again, we have two presenters. First of all, our friends from North, from their council, Alan Gordon, and we'll discuss what things that is. And then from our council, we will have the council president, Dixie Reed, to talk about Coeur d'Alene. Council Gordon.
Well, thank you very much. This may seem strange to some, but what we are proud of is the very utility that the councilor just spoke about. And we do things differently. A number of years ago, we were faced with the same problem that Coeur d'Alene obviously has now with our liquid waste utility. And the community, through some innovative ideas of particular councilors, decided that they did not like the fact that they were treating the water and putting it back into the creek which runs through our community. And I know everybody does it, and I know technology has come a long way to make that somewhat acceptable. But to the community of the day, they chose to go a different route. So the collection system in the liquid waste is probably very, very similar to your own. It's ours is almost 100% gravity feed, and it goes ends up into 3 lagoons that take about 24 acres in the north end of our community. But that's where ours differ from anywhere else in this part of the world. We take it from the 3rd lagoon and we lift it up and we put it on an old railroad grade that the city was able to purchase, and it just happened to gravitate in the right direction, 3/4 of 1% away from the community. And some 9 kilometers or 6 miles away, there was some Crown provincially owned land that was vacant, that was heavily wooded with yellow pine and not very productive. And the city talked the provincial government into entering into a partnership with us for an experiment. And reluctantly they agreed. They put many, many hurdles in, but the community, the council, I should say, supported very heavily by the community, went ahead and made an investment of some $10.3 million with 2 other levels of government and the city. And what we have now is when we lift the water onto that railroad grade into a 20-inch pipe, it travels that 6 miles into 2 large ponds. to a site we call our spray irrigation site. The city now has the deeded land of about 2,600 acres. And of that, there's 1,660 acres that are have been cleared and are intensely farmed for irrigated pasture and excuse me, and hay crops. So we utilize we store that water, the wastewater, for a whole year. There's no chemicals added. At the treatment system, when it starts, it's a tertiary treatment. It's a natural biological process, which we aerate to introduce oxygen to make it rapid. And this continues on right into the large cells that we have, or the large ponds we have at the site. We have a pump house. We have 30 miles of underground pipe ranging from 30-inch to 8-inch. We have 6 200 horsepower motors that irrigate this land. We have 7 ranchers that we have contracts with that do all of the farming, all of the ranching. Excuse me. We produce 4,200 AUMs of on the site, which I'm sure that it's the same as here. An AUM is an animal unit month, which is a cow and a calf for 30 days on irrigated pasture. We also produce 3,600 tons of forage that feeds them over the winter. The ranchers claim that they put more than $2 million back into the economy every year. And the storage ponds are large enough that we can store about a year and a half supply without pumping anything. We have, it's measured in acre feet. Our pond capacity is 5,000 acre feet, and we produce about 3,000 acre feet a year, which is, we're producing about 3 million US gallons a day. So the net result, and one of the reasons why that the community is proud of this, is there is no liquid waste leaves the site. There is ongoing, continuous monitoring and testing of all hay products, animals that are on the site, the groundwater has not been affected. We have not had one incident in 26 years. And now the advantage to that is that site now is, if you can believe it, it's 2,600 acres of a fenced farm with no gates. The public has access to it. There is thousands of recreation hours every year spent in there, in wildlife viewing, bird watching, hunting. There's last week my wife and I were out there, and in less than half an hour I saw over 25 wild turkeys, 3 or 4 flocks of geese. There was 50 or 60 elk within a few hundred yards. There's whitetail, and the hunting it's pursued in the open season very vigorously. And that does 2 things. It provides a great amount of recreation for the people that hunt, but it also helps to keep the herds down. When the site started, there was about 12 elk recognized in that region. This last year, they were trying to talk us into a cull hunt because there's over 300 wintering on it. So it's just grown, and it's people go out there and they train their dogs in the fields. They cross-country ski in the wintertime. So that is a real benefit to us, but there is another economic benefit. The per capita cost of that site is about $15 per year per capita against a tertiary treatment plant, which is about $45 a year. So as a community, we took some chances, and the people that paid the bill really took the chances. And it's worked out very well, and we're very proud of it.
What a great story, what a great planning. You just spend a little money and make a lot later. Now Dixie Reed.
Thank you, Tony. I think this is an interesting topic of what the city is most proud. And I was interested in Councilor Gordon's, what he's most proud of, and it occurred to me that what we are most proud of as Cranbrook officials and as City of Coeur d'Alene officials is our ability to stretch our minds, to take chances, and to think out of the box. And Coeur d'Alene does that on a regular basis. Particularly under Mayor Bloom's leadership, we have learned how important interagency partnerships are. And we partner regularly, both with the public and the private sector. We partner with our developers, as you heard, to ensure that growth is paying its own way. And we partner with other governmental units, with our county government, with our school districts, with our highway districts, anywhere we can, fire districts, police agencies. We have partnerships going in every direction. The result of those partnerships means lower tax dollars for our citizens and greater levels of service. So we do an awful lot of that on a regular basis. I don't think there's a day that goes by that we're not partnering with somebody, with our business community also. One of the tools that Idaho provides for local governments is called tax increment finance. And you guys have that up in Canada? It's a very innovative way of stimulating economic growth. And what happens is you form an urban renewal district, is what we call them. And when that urban renewal district is formed, the tax base is frozen as of the date it's formed, the property tax base. Now, everybody in the county, all the little agencies that get all of their money, still get that amount of money that they're getting. But any money that's generated above that base goes to an urban renewal agency. In Coeur d'Alene, ours is called the Lake City Development Corporation, to use to stimulate the economy. And it's a wonderful process. Right now, our Lake City Development Corporation is about 6 years old, I believe. We're running a budget of $500,000. Within the next 3 years, we will see a budget of over $3 million. And all of that money is pumped back into the community, sometimes to help with infrastructure. Right now, Lake City Development Corporation is getting ready to help fund some sewer line that has to run several miles to reach a new development. The money will be paid back to the developer through his own taxes for that sewer line over a period of time as the taxes are collected. And an interesting thing about that is the taxes for the school districts are not frozen. The school districts still get their money. So tax increment financing is a huge thing that we're proud of and we're learning to do very well. Right now, Coeur d'Alene has 2 urban renewal districts. One is called the Lake District, the other one is called the River District. One other way that we've learned to be innovative is in our bonding ability. We were talking at lunch about one of the big things is streets are in disrepair, and that's always a big deal. How do we keep the traffic moving? How do we fill the potholes? How do we resurface them? Our staff got together and was very innovative here about 10, it's been almost 14 years ago now, I think. Time gets away. And they set up a bond, a revenue bond, that we went out to the community for $10 million to fix our streets. And we told them which streets would be fixed and when they would be fixed. And the community passed by about 70% this revenue bond. And you say, a revenue bond, well, where do we get the money to pay that off with? That comes from our partnership with the state government, with monies that come from them for roads and bridges, a little bit of fuel tax, and also, the other one just went out of my head. Ben, help me. Franchise fees. Thank you. Thank you. We charge our utilities, our local cable company and our power company, a franchise fee of 5% on their gross income for the use of our streets. So that money is $10 million is being paid back with no out-of-pocket money to our property tax payers, and we're pretty proud of that. So I think what the city is most proud of is our innovation and the way we're able to stretch the city tax dollars. Thank you, Tony.
Well, thank you so very much. Our third category of our 5 categories we're discussing today has to do with visitors should look for our watch when they come. We love to have visitors, and I know you do too. And we have 2 people present, and I apologize if I don't pronounce this correctly. But from the Cranbrook, it is Jim. Is it Waver Cran? Okay, thank you very much. He'll discuss from that viewpoint, and then Deanna Goodlander from Coeur d'Alene. Please.
Thanks, Tony, and apology accepted for the name pronunciation. It's been a number of different ways over the years. Yours is by far not the worst.
Thank you.
First of all, I just wanted to thank the people of Coeur d'Alene for this opportunity. I think the more exposure I get to both sides of the border, the more I find how similar we actually are. The last time I was down here doing anything political was at Bonner's Ferry, and I think we were jointly beating up on the governor about the condition of the road between Canada and Bonner's Ferry, and the similarities then haven't changed. The distance from ourselves to the capital region, the state or the province are similar, and the battles for recognition continue on both sides. The areas that I wanted to talk about today, one is the Canadian Museum of Rail Travel, and I've circulated a brochure, and I brought extras for the audience if they'd like to have them before they leave. But Cranbrook's history essentially begins with the railroad. In 1898, the railroad came through our area, it was completed through our area, and we actually celebrated the centennial of the railroad 6 years ago. And subsequent to that, and as a result of the railroad being there, the city was founded 7 years later. The exciting thing that's happening in Cranbrook is that we have someone with vision who has grasped the concept of railroad and has amassed a collection that you would not believe. We're looking at 3 complete train sets with a commitment for a 4th train set, and you're probably familiar with the train, the stainless steel train that travels across Canada. He's got some commitment for that to be located at the museum on its completion of usefulness. So he's put together trains amassed right back to the very beginning and restored these. And just in your brochures, you get an idea of the actual trains themselves. The Sioux Spokane, of course, is a train or car named after for Spokane, obviously. But the importance of this collection is really reflected in the national status that it's attained. It used to be the Cranbrook Railroad Museum, and Gary Anderson, who's the head of the museum, amassed some cars and really received national recognition in his collection, to the point of both his initiative and the government of Canada coming back at him and saying, this is so important that you need to get national recognition, you need to change this museum to a Canadian museum, which was accomplished. And he's actually pulled the train sets together. Recent innovation, in your brochures, you'll see some mention to the Royal Alexandra Hall, which, if any of you are familiar with the National Railroad of Canada, the Canadian Pacific, they had a number of hotels across Canada, the Banff Springs Hotel. There was a hotel in Winnipeg that had essentially a dining room that was dismantled board by board and set aside a number of years ago. Gary found it, found a way to get it to Cranbrook, found a way to get the money to put it together, and it's now housed as part of the entranceway into the Railroad Museum. So it's lots of open air, lots of history. People are coming from far and wide just to see the dining room from the hotel in Winnipeg. So it's a huge collection, continues to grow. We're very excited about the possibilities. My understanding is officially within the next month we have our first revenue generation out of the Royal Alexandra Hall. Somebody's renting the hall and we're starting to raise some money there. So we're trying to gain some revenue so that it can continue to grow, not on the public's back, I guess, but for sure you can't miss that when you come to Cranbrook. Secondly, next year, I mentioned the establishment of Cranbrook as a result of the railroad. That was 100 years ago as of next year. And I'm excited about the centennial coming forward. Essentially, the committee has identified approximately 20 activities occurring next year under the umbrella of the centennial. Everything from Kinsman, Rotary Club, sort of directing their celebrations during the year to the centennial to actual independent functions. There will be invitations coming out to certainly the councillors and the mayor to attend the official centennial, which will be on November 1st, 2005. And we also are looking for the following weekend to have a gala event to celebrate the artists of the community, both visual and performing arts. So it's something to mark your calendars for. More importantly, if you've got an opportunity anytime during the year next year to come and visit us, you'll see that everybody's taken on the guise of the centennial and the celebration, and it should be a very exciting year starting from day one. And finally, Councillor Liz Schatzner couldn't make it today. She had something else come up, and her expertise is in the area of our local celebration of Sam Steele Days. She actually coordinates the parade, and I know that Coeur d'Alene has a float up there on a regular basis to be part of that. It continues to grow. Sam Steele Days this year is June 17th to 20th. We're looking at probably the best youth ambassador in Western Canada. I won't say the States because we have a competition down here. Western Canada got to be the best youth ambassador pageant that does take place. So if you are planning on coming up, make sure you get there early enough to take in that on the Friday evening. The parade Saturday morning. The focus the last 8 to 10 years has been about family. So we have all sorts of activities throughout the community for family to be involved in. Sports competitions, approximately 20 teams coming in for things like softball championships, all sorts of activities for those 4 full days. So, you might as well maybe rent a place in Cranbrook next year just to take advantage of the whole centennial. And you're more than welcome to do that. And I'll certainly share the brochure with the rest of the crowd on the museum.
Oh, how wonderful. On Wednesday, we had the Fort Steele Heritage Company here to perform. They were also promoting all these great activities. And we've got to be coming north over the next year and a half. And with that, Deanna, good land.
Thank you. I find it really exciting to hear about your new Sam Steele celebration this year because it's going to be a lot of fun. And for many, many years as part of the chamber, I managed to attend the parades, bring our float up, and I will tell you that our royalty, our junior Miss Girls that ride the float, look forward to Cranbrook as being one of the high points of their year because they really entertain us well. They find gentlemen escorts for our girls to go to the ball, and they just have a wonderful time. So thank you for your hospitality. Cranbrook is one of my favorite places to visit in Canada. We've got a lot of happenings in Coeur d'Alene in the summertime, and I'm just going to kind of go down the list and comment on each one. Unfortunately, one of them is Coeur d'Alene, which is going to happen at the same time as Sam Steele Days. Coeur d'Alene is CAR, C-A-R, D'Alene, is a old car festival, and we have it's a 50s type celebration, and all of the car collectors, and we have many car collector friends from Canada that come down to join us in our cruise on our city streets on Friday night. Last year we had about 300 cars attend to do the cruise. It's around and around and around. We have rock bands, all kinds of fun happenings downtown. But to begin at the first part of the season, our first one is Coeur d'Alene. We are working on our wooden boat show to come back again. It didn't come last year, but it will be coming again next year. We're planning on it this spring. And our Chamber of Commerce is working on that celebration. That is when wooden boat collectors from around the country bring their boats, and they're on a kind of a circuit. So you get to see all kinds of restored wooden boats as well as new manufactured wooden boats that we have an outstanding wooden boat builder here in Coeur d'Alene that builds beautiful wooden boats, and they line up on the boardwalk of Coeur d'Alene Resort and have an open house for everyone to walk along the boardwalk and look at these beautiful boats. Our
major festival after that one, and it seems like we just have one thing after another this summer, is Ironman. This is our second year for Ironman. Those of you from Canada will be familiar with Ironman in Penticton. We very fortunately started working with Ironman last year, and our first Ironman was last year. This is going to occur on June 26th and 25th and 26th. Last year we had 1,800 contestants participate in this Ironman triathlon, and it was an experience for those of us that live in Coeur d'Alene. Begins, of course, with a swim, and when you're standing on the docks, as I was fortunate enough to be able to do, and you see 1,800 people hit the water at the same time. It's an amazing sight. And I think what we came away with last year from Ironman was the incredible persistence that it requires to participate in this program. We fully anticipate, and the Ironman people are participating between 22 and 2,500 contestants this year. So it's going to grow. They were pleased with us even though it was 90 degrees in the shade, and they had a tough time last year. They want to come back, and so we're very excited about that. Our other celebration that comes up after that isn't one that our Canadian friends participate in, but it's our 4th of July celebration for our celebrating our Independence Day, and it's a peculiarly U.S. celebration, of course. But it's an old-fashioned weekend, and it's one of my favorite places is to be in the city park on the 4th of July because we have a parade, and that parade is filled with just citizens, just local folks. They decorate their business trucks and put them in the parade or their cars, as well as we welcome our friends from Canada. We do have folks from Canada that come down and join us in that parade. And that is a pretty long parade. It lasts about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Then in the evening, we welcome to Coeur d'Alene approximately 40,000 people, which our police force just really love to try to deal with. But they do it, and do it admirably, for our fireworks celebration. And it is an experience to sit on the beach and watch the fireworks on the lake. So that's our next major celebration. Following that, we have a major celebration the last weekend of July, and that celebration is our Art in the Green. And we have Taste of the Coeur d'Alene's in the city park, where local vendors put up booths with different types of food items, all kinds of booths with art. Different vendors come in and craftsmen come in and bring their art, their wares to sell. We also have here right at North Idaho College, just kind of around the corner from this building, which is where Art on the Green originally started, and that event is filled with vendors of a usually a fairly high caliber of artists come into Art on the Green. During that time, there are all kinds of entertainment. It's just a major weekend to enjoy in the city of Coeur d'Alene. And we do, again, get many of our friends from Canada that come down to that. We do most of our celebrating in the summer, it seems, in Coeur d'Alene. That seems to be the best time to be here, although in the wintertime we do have folks come down and stay with us and ski the various ski hills that are close by. Silver Mountain at Kellogg, and of course Schweitzer at Sandpoint. I will say, when you commented on the roads and working with our fellow vendors, we've been working for a long time to improve that highway, and I hope that we can get it done sooner or later, because we're sure working on it. I happened to be in Senator Craig's office in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago, and he mentioned that his goal was still to get 95 all the way north to Canada, a good road, instead of that, what we used to call the cow trail, or the wagon trail. I think that's kind of the list of our events. We have a long history of Canadian participation in our community, as well as us participating with the Cranbrook folks. I remember as a child we had many Canadian folks came down our way to visit in the summertime, and I value that association highly. I will say that your Railroad Museum is unique. I happened to be there a few years back when I believe it must have been before your time, Mayor Priest, because it was Mayor Patterson's term, and had lunch in, I believe, the Argyle dining car, and that was a true experience. It's exciting to see what you're doing with your Railroad Museum. It's, I think, unique. I've never seen anything like it with such a large collection. So I'm looking forward to coming back again.
Deanna, thank you so very much. Of course, something else that's essential to democracy are elections, and we have 3 people to present on how to conduct what the laws are concerning elections. From Cranbrook, we have Scott Manjack, I hope I pronounced that correctly. And then from our city, we have 2. We have from our council, Al Hassel and Woody McGavers. And Mr. Manjack, if you would go, please.
Thank you very much, Tony. Like the United States of America, Canada is going to be having a federal election this year, and I'll touch briefly on the federal election process and briefly on the provincial, and then we'll go into municipal. So on the federal level, what's the difference between the United States and Canada? On the federal level, we vote a party into power, and the leader of that party becomes prime minister. And within that mandate, they are elected to a 5-year mandate, and they can call a re-election or an election at any point in that 5-year mandate. There is really no fixed election date. So the party can call an election on a number of issues. If there's a national emergency or a national scandal, for example, then they would be forced into calling an election. But for the most part, we're pretty quiet in Canada for the most part, except for this particular point in history. But so, you know, the ruling party can call an election based solely on what the polls are saying. If they see they're up in the polls, there's nothing stopping from that government in place to call an election when they're favorable in the polls. If they happen to have a downtime in the polls, there's no fixed election date within that 5-year period. So if they're really not very popular, there's nothing making them call an election unless they're getting close to the end of their term, and then there is a fixed election. They will have to call an election by a certain time. So generally speaking, the governing power has the discretion to call an election. To run for a federal seat, it's sort of similar to the primary process from what I can understand what the Americans do. So, and a good example is our mayor. Our mayor has just won the right to run in the next federal election for the federal Liberal Party. So the process that he had to go through is called a nomination process. So basically what happens is that during this period, it's not really defined by a time frame, but there's any number of people can run, but you have to be a member of the party. So I'll use the Liberal Party, that's the governing party at this point. So you have to be a member of that party, and then you go out and try to sell memberships to that party and also solicit the existing memberships within your riding. So you talk to the existing Liberal Party members within your riding, sell memberships to make that your riding larger, and then they go to a nomination meeting. It's a 1-day meeting, similar to a primary, and then members of the party only will cast their vote for who they feel is the best candidate. There could be 2 candidates, there could be 7 candidates. And so whoever comes out of that nomination meeting with the most votes wins the right to represent that riding in the next federal election. Now, the provincial election is similar in the sense is that it's again, you have to be a member of the party, you solicit memberships, you talk to the current memberships, have a nomination meeting, and again, you win the right to represent that party in the next provincial election. And on the provincial scene, it used to be similar that the ruling party was elected to, I believe, a 5-year mandate, is that correct, 5 years? And within that time frame, they again had the discretion to call the election at their pleasure. If they're up in the polls, they may call an election. If they're down, obviously they're not. What's changed now is the current Liberal Party in BC, who is the governing party, one of their campaign promises was to set a fixed election date. So I believe the next provincial election is next May 15th, is it? 17th, May 17th of 2005. So we now know for certainty when we're going to have our next provincial election. On a municipal level in Canada, all of us on our council are elected to 3-year terms. There was a time where it sounds like it was similar to what you have now. is there used to be staggered elections, and I believe there was 1-year terms, 2-year terms, 2-year terms. That's now changed. So now in BC, all councillors are elected to a 3-year term. So every 3 years, so for the current councillors here, our next election is next November. So how it works is it's usually the third Saturday of November. And, pardon me, Alan, I hear Alan talking. And now is our resident expert. He's one of the long-serving councillors that we have. But so our next election is November of 2005. It's usually the third Saturday of every November. Now for that process, usually what happens in September, we have anywhere from a 3 to 4 week nomination period. So usually the first week of September, so September of 2005, the nomination period will open up. It's usually for the 3 to 4 weeks of September. And to be nominated for a city council position, I believe from my recollection is you have one person nominate you, you sign the papers, take them down to City Hall, and essentially to qualify you just have to be eligible to vote in British Columbia. I think there's a 6-month residence. As long as you're an eligible voter, for the most part, you're eligible to hold office. So the nomination period ends usually around the last week of September, and then we go into the actual campaign. And the campaign lasts from the last week of September when the nomination period closes until basically the Friday before the election. So it's roughly about a 45-day campaign period. So to run, for example, there's 6 seats open every 3 years. There's 6 councillor seats open, and the mayor's seat is open. The last election, we had 12 people running for the 6 councillor seats and 3 people running for the mayor's seat. And essentially, the election before that, we had, I believe, 14 people running for 6 seats and 2 people running for mayor. In terms of financing your campaign, from what I can see, the average cost for a candidate to run for city council in Cranbrook spends anywhere from maybe $1,000 to $5,000. I would say the average is about maybe $1,500 to $2,000 an average councillor will pay. For the mayor, to run for the mayor's position, it's a little more expensive. But the interesting thing about it is that they're really, from what I can see, and again, Alan will correct me if I'm wrong, there's really no spending limit attached to this position. Whereas in a federal election, there is a spending cap. Provincial election, I'm not sure, there may be, there may not be. I'll probably never find out because I won't run for provincial politics. But so there's really no spending limit on a city councillor. Like I say, the average is spends anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500, and all 6 seats come up every 3 years. The mayor's position comes up every 3 years, and as long as you're an eligible voter, you can run for office.
So just to let you know, that invitation comes to whoever candidate. None of us might be there. Actually, we plan to get about 2 weeks before the election.
Yeah,
That's a relief. One quick question that's a political scientist. You're governor of your province. Does that come out of the majority party in the legislative process, just like the prime minister does?
that's right. So the leader of the party that's elected for the province becomes the premier of the province.
The majority of the legislative
That's
body.
right. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. The difference, for example, you have a presidential, your elections are in November. See, from what I can see in the United States, you can vote for the president and might have a Congress and a Senate that's a Democratic president, a Republican Congress and Senate. In Canada, we don't have that. When I go to vote in a federal election, I'm voting for the local person, and if I don't get a direct vote for the prime minister, I vote for the person. So I may like the candidate of the Liberal Party, but don't like their leader, and my vote for that person is an automatic vote for that party.
When you were presenting, I noticed your mayor knew exactly when the election was on May 17th. Seems like he has an interest there.
Yes, he is our candidate.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful explanation. Al, we'll start. Al Hassel with you, please.
Yeah. In Coeur d'Alene or in any city in Idaho, we're given the authority actually to have a little bit difference within our councils. We can have a council that is elected, first of all, they're staggered seats, 4 years, with an election every 2 years, of half the council. So in our case, we have 6 members,
getting here. And this isn't real thorough, but it gives you a rough idea of where I was at and where I don't know where I'm going, but I know where I'm at. One of the first things I remember when I decided to do this, the first question they asked you is, why do you want to be a city councilman? Well, I had to think, why did I want to do this? Well, I'm an optimist, I think I can make things better for our city. I mean, that's pretty standard. I was on planning and zoning for 5 years, so I certainly understood how the city worked, right? Yeah, right. I will speak from my heart and make educated decisions, right? And that's the way I felt that you would have to be a council guy. The optimist was just the way I am. I'm a pretty positive guy, and I would look for a positive outcome on any issues. I think I bring people together. Again, I'm a nice guy, friendly, handshaker type of guy. And I would always take the high road. Always be the nice guy. That's optimism. The experience side with the planning and zoning, I figured I knew what was going on. I'd made decisions based on information that I presented in planning and zoning hearings, and that I would be a good asset to this community. And then, from my heart, that I would listen to the people and care about their needs, because I did, or why would I do this? And I would work hard to learn the system of government, because it is different from my world of business. It's different. And at the time, I thought, well, it's all the same. We're taking care of folks. It's the folks' money. Let's do it well. And then I would engage the citizens on the topics and the visions of our city, which, because I have a restaurant, touch a lot of people. They can yell at me and talk to me about different issues. So that's where I started. That's what I preached when I was on the campaign circuit. And then came the issues. I'd signed up, I paid my money, and then all of a sudden all these issues came forward. Things like local option taxes, election consolidation, future economic development, neighborhood associations, Coeur d'Alene Basin cleanup, community center, regional infrastructure, labor relations. I didn't have a clue what all this stuff meant. Most of it I'd never heard of. So, because these were the lists of questions people were going to ask me about, I needed to get some information. So I just started talking and calling people, the big business guys in town, the car dealers, and people when you've been in a town that they understand certain things. I recorded the information and tried to get both sides of the issue, which was always interesting, because some people, there is no two sides to issues. Usually there's 3 or 4 sides. And when you find a bunch of people in one direction, it's hard to find them in the other. So you ask them, no, we don't want you to know the other side. The city and the county folks were really good, because a lot of these issues were city issues, county issues, regional issues. And they were really good. I could call anybody in the city or the county and they'd respond. They would give me data from their perspective, which was usually what it is. They didn't necessarily have ideas one direction or the other. This is the way it is. So that was real interesting. Slowly, I would try and think about these issues. Okay, I've got all these sides now. What am I going to do with it? But no, I learned about them. I discussed. I listened to different people's views. But you know what? I came away during the campaign with not any real answers. I thought that's what you're supposed to do. We're supposed to come up with the answers. It wasn't working for me. Then not the best part, but then the next part came. The meetings, the forums, the interviews, the luncheons. Luncheons were kind of fun. Free lunch. I thought it was going to be great, After all, I was a restaurant guy. I was a people guy. I could shake hands and talk to people. And sometimes, and most of the time, there was food at the functions. That was good. The Chamber of Commerce. This was televised. Okay, we're going to be on television, right? They handed out the questions 3 days before, thanks God, because there was all these things I'd never heard of. So I had a chance to think about it, make all these calls, get on the phone, and try and understand this. And it was the first chance I got to meet the other candidates, all the people that were in the same boat with me. Some of them you were here, and Ben was there, and a lot of other folks. And I thought that was real interesting, because here's all these people that want to give back to their community. It was cool. Well, the first night, I didn't wear a tie. Everyone else did, as you can see. It's interesting how that follows me around. I remember my dad calling me the next day and said, "You should have worn a tie. You didn't look good, you should have worn a tie." So, oh man, I disappointed my dad, right? So the Chamber of Commerce went 2 times. So the second time, I wore the tie. And nobody else did. It's my nature, you know. I went to they called us to a meeting, Environmental Alliance. Again, didn't have a clue who they were, but it was a free lunch. All the candidates that I was on TV with were all there for the most part. Same questions, same answers. You start to get to know each other because we're starting to hear the same thing. Everybody's got their thing down now. What do you say to this and that?
It's called staying on message.
Yeah, you develop it real quick, right? But what's interesting about these folks was there were some new issues from this Environmental Alliance. Public transportation. I'd never heard that one before. Low-income housing. These were all new to me. So that's what I told them when they asked me. I go, well, I don't know, but I'll check it out. I'll look into it. The Realtors, Association of Realtors. This was different. We got the questions again a few days before, so I had a chance to learn about some more new stuff. But this was an interview. Yes, an interview. We were interviewed separately by 4 people on a board. So you came into this room and sat in front of these 4 people and they went through your questions. And the question was mostly around growth and taxes. And so, having come from planning and zoning, that was kind of a comfort zone. At least I thought I knew what I thought. Didn't have the answers, but I kind of knew that. The last one was the newspapers. This was really different. One-on-one. These guys were really nice. They'd come to my business or come to my home or call me on the phone, ask me about personal stuff, family, business, good old boy stuff. Then they write about you from their perspective of what they think you will do if you get elected. This was interesting because now people read in the paper about you. They start to approach you, they congratulate you, and ask you why you're running, right? The regular folks. Then the strangest part of the whole thing happens. They give you money. I found that just totally bizarre. Money. I wondered how to get the money to buy the campaign signs, ads in the paper, business cards, the flyers, the buttons, and the pencils with your name on them. I really had no clue. I didn't. But people started sending money. Sometimes a $20 check, sometimes a $200 check, and once a $500 check. This was really amazing to me. People from all over the city were donating and saying, "We think you will do a good job." And I'll tell you, when folks give you money and encourage you to be their guy at City Hall, it is the most inspiring and humbling experience I've ever had. It motivated me to understand issues that are important to our citizens. I've got to tell you this story. The $500 came from a city labor association. I was confused about a donation so large. Did I owe them? Right? We talked about politics. Well, once a little girl was leaving my restaurant with her folks. Her dad gave her a quarter to put in the gumball machine. You guys have heard this. She decided to donate it to me and said she hoped it would help her win the election. Hoped it would help me win the election. It was at that point the $500 donation brought a perspective to me that had been spinning in my brain. Do I owe favors for $500? Do I owe favors for a quarter? That little girl set me straight, and they hoped I would win the election. I could go on, and I have many stories. But the experience of the campaign was like no other in my life. It was fun, it was humbling, it was exhausting, it was crazy, but it was a wonderful experience. The last 2 years have been most informative years of my life. Any questions I had on any issues have always been answered directly and positively from anyone I have asked, and I thank you. No doors have ever been shut on me, and I appreciate that. And I've met the greatest people that work in our fine city and the folks that do this job at all other levels of government. And I serve at the pleasure of the citizens of the Coeur d'Alene.
Thank you, Woody, very much. I guess I should add a footnote. Years ago, Woody was a cameraman on our TV show. Remember, Woody? And you know we don't give questions in advance. Okay. Okay, our last topic. Top priorities and vision for the future. And we're very pleased to have two people, again, from Cranbrook on their council. Angus Davis and our Mayor, Sandy Bloom. Mr. Davis, go first.
Thank you very much, Tony. Before I get into the topic, I'd like to thank the City of Coeur d'Alene for hosting this forum and inviting us down, because it's really good to be here. And this is just ending my second year as a councillor for Cranbrook, and so it's an eye-opener and a good thing, I think, to be able to come down and visit you people. I think that as a priority, I think one of the priorities we need to keep in mind is not only where we're going, but where we've been. And one of the places that your part of Idaho and our part of British Columbia has in common is about 100 years ago, most of the commerce in the eastern part of British Columbia originated and was coordinated from Montana, this part of Idaho, and Washington, Spokane. The early development, the early industrial development of these Kootenays and the West Kootenays was in the mining industry, and these people that came into the British Columbia area came up the Kootenay River, and they were, for the most part, located at Sandpoint or Bonner's Ferry. They had river boats going up, they had steamboats going up to Kootenay Lake, and it was probably more than a lot of people would think today that this is what existed so long ago, because the border is there now and there's all sorts of things going on, us and them. And 100 years ago, it was mostly together that we did these things. So I think it's good to be reminded sometime that it's nice to have plans where to go, but if you want to get someplace, you can also get there a little bit easier if you know where you've been and you know what some of the common things you have. A lot of the mines in British Columbia were established by people from this area. The smelters at Kellogg and Wallace, they took a lot of it. And what the provincial government did was, in British Columbia, they were scared. There was so much leaving British Columbia that they hired this guy, Colonel Dewdney, and they said, Colonel, build us a trail from Hope to Wild Horse Creek, because we got this gold strike up here, but as with everything else, everything's going down to the States. We need a conduit through British Columbia. So this was part of the separation that, of the economies that came, was the initial formation of the Dewdney Trail. Personally, I have a little bit of connection with here. I was born in Nelson, and this lady sitting over here in the white sweater, she and I got married in 1959 in Cranbrook, and I was just about ready to enter my last year at Gonzaga University, and I'd been accepted to St. Francis Xavier in Nova Scotia, but we couldn't stand the thought of being apart, so we went to Gonzaga instead. And while we're at Gonzaga, I was fortunate to, my dad had a friend who was in the real estate business in Spokane. Roy Dull was his name, and he was in the old Empire State Building. And he had a friend that needed somebody to run a motel for him. So if there's anybody that's been around here long enough to remember the Mountain View Motel in Green Acres, in 1960, Arlene and I were the proud operators for Mr. Ed Metzger of the Mountain View Motel. And I used to think it was sort of strange that you'd drive into Spokane to go to Gonzaga to an ethics or a theology class or something like that, and you just left what was going on at the Mountain View Motel. It was hard to place both of them on the same experience. But if nothing else, it was educational. I got one more little story to tell, and this is when we were running the Mountain View Motel, and I was also working at the Continental Baking Company. We decided to go up to Cranbrook for just Christmas Day to visit Arlene's mother and father. So we drove up on Christmas Eve, spent Christmas Eve night, and on Christmas Day we came back down. Now when you come to the border, right now it's all full of people with guns and stuff like that, and they're asking all sorts of questions. On Christmas night in 1960, we came to the border. There was a janitor in the little old customs thing at the United States side of the border. And we went in and said, we'd like to go through. He says, well, you have to sit and wait. And we said, okay, why? Well, the custom agent is home having Christmas dinner. And if he said anybody came, they'd have to wait till he finished his dinner. So that was, you know, things have changed a little bit. But those are just some of our recollections on being in the area and, you know, how nice it is to be here now. On the infrastructure priority of Cranbrook, we've got a particular problem, and it needs addressing, and I think is being addressed, and that is with a lot of our streets and a lot of the water and sewer lines underneath those streets. The provincial government for many years provided grants if you were going to do capital works on infrastructure like water and sewer roads. And this would, in effect, the grant was so sweet that it would make it about a 50-cent dollar that you were spending to get all this. And I think it'd be about 20 years ago, they cut that out because they couldn't afford it anymore, you know, they'd go broke. So a lot of municipalities are in a similar situation where we're used to having all this money coming in to be able to do infrastructure work. And then because things weren't falling apart that quickly after they stopped it, you know, you sort of put off, and now it's been put off so long.